everyone. Top of the morning. My name's Chris Kim, and I'm here to talk to you all about our postgraduate certificate program on front-end web development. And let's go and jump right into it. Just before we begin, I serve as an academic coordinator for this specific program, and you're welcome to go ahead and keep this email on file, chris.kim@georgebrown.ca, should you have any questions or concerns after this presentation. Our agenda is as follows. I want to go ahead and briefly introduce the program, briefly talk about the strength of what we have to offer as part of this program, and also give you a series of items that you might be curious about, and answer any questions as part of this program, as part of this presentation rather. Hoping I'll be able to give you a bit of a breakdown of what you can expect as part of the program semester by semester, and of course the various expectations that you can bring to the table on a weekly basis as well. And thereafter, should you have any more questions about how you can proceed with application, I'll also go ahead and expand on that for a bit as well. And finally, talk about applicability of what we have to offer as part of this program to the industry. All right, if I were to go ahead and summarize this program in 3 bullet points, I would go ahead and present whatever that you see in front of the screen here. We are hoping to provide this intense one-year program that sets out to bridge the gap between what we know about user experience design and functionality. And in the context of this conversation that we're having, what we mean by functionality is the various aspects of programming that we can use to kickstart an application development project. Thereafter, we're also hoping to bring you some of the more up-to-date and industry-oriented curriculum with focus on work integration, so-called work integrated learning. We bring in active professionals in the industry to carve out the time to serve their insights and tell us what they know and what they wish they knew about the industry as part of this program. So if you're looking to hit the ground running beyond this program into the industry, this just might be what you're looking for. And finally, we focus our efforts in making sure that you're ready to prototype, create a series of experimental projects that serve as a great portfolio piece, as well as a wonderful talking point with your future clients and employers. And yes, as I had mentioned, this is an intense program in a sense that we try to pack in as many applicable courses into our 3 semesters. So I want to go ahead and give you a quick breakdown of what you can expect semester by semester. So this is our semester 1, which would map to your fall semester. And we run a gamut in terms of the materials that we cover and the topics that we discuss as part of each cohort. First, we spend a good amount of time in bringing ourselves up to speed in the various languages and technologies that we use to build front-end web projects. That includes DSN 3031, Applied Interface Design, as well as DSN 3032, Applied Interface Development. This is where you get to learn the basics or review the basics of the various languages, including HTML, CSS, and of course, JavaScript, that serve as fundamental technologies that one can use to build front-end projects. But of course, these technologies won't matter to us much without context. And that's where the next 2 courses come in really handy. DSN 3033, User Interface Design and Techniques, and DSN 3034, Prototyping and Experience Design. This is where we bring in active professionals from the field to tell us about what it means to build an interactive experience that is designed for designed and optimized for usability and positive user experience. So you'll get to go ahead and learn about the best practices and fundamental principles in visual design and how that translates to application design. And as part of 3034, you'll really get to get to experience what it means to prototype an application from start to finish and how that may serve as a crucial phase in any kind of application development. The next two courses, DSN 3035, Libraries, Tools, and Workflow, as well as DSN 3036, serve as supplementary concepts that will help you work closely with your peers as well as your future colleagues down the line. Libraries, Tools, and Workflow is a course that is set to calibrate you to various industry standard best practices and tools that one can use to work effectively as a team with your colleagues. And 3036 Studio and Capstone serve as an opportunity for you to synthesize all the learnings from other courses where you get to focus on the project that you wish to work on, hence the term studio. As part of this course, you'll also go ahead and meet a number of guest presenters who will serve as one of many capstone presenters who will tell you everything that you should know before taking a deep dive into the industry. Now, that was semester one. And if you felt that that was overwhelming, just wait until we talk about this particular semester, semester number 2. This is where we get to once again review some of the concepts that we covered in semester 1 and truly focus on reaching the level of mastery in each of those individual technologies and tools that we use as part of this industry. As part of the ESN 3037 front-end application architecture, this is where we get to step back away from the languages themselves and think about how these languages are used in an effective fashion to build scalable and mature applications. Whether you're building a simple prototype for yourself or contributing to a big tech application, they generally share the same architecture. And this is where you get to go ahead and get to identify commonality between this variety of applications and see how you might be able to find your place in the industry. Thereafter, we move on to data design development or data design and development, DSN 3038. This is a course that is dedicated to learning more about database design. Front-end application mainly deals with questions about what the user sees and how the user interacts with the application. But this is an opportunity for you to think about how the data will be stored that will be served to the users or to collect the data from the users themselves. So this is where you get to experiment with applications or technologies such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, and many others. Moving on, future interface design, DSN 3040. We're living in a rather exciting time where we see new ways of interacting with our computing devices, and this is what this course is all about. We have wonderful guest speakers and lecturers who really carved out their niche in building future interface, and that includes everything from touchscreen devices all the way to VR headsets. After all, VR headset seems to be on everybody's minds nowadays with the rise of head-mounted display devices. So this is the kind of course where you actually get to step back away from the best practices and fundamental principles and really get to dream big. Moving on, here we have DSN 3041 front-end frameworks, where we get to learn more about technologies that build on top of our fundamental technologies such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that help us work more effectively as a team. Some of the names of the frameworks that will be discussed include Vue.js, Angular, as well as React, which serve as libraries of pre-existing code that you can use so that you can work more effectively with your peers and also streamline your own personal workflow. So we'll get to go and talk more about these additional frameworks at your disposal. Let's go to move on to industry employment and portfolio, DSN 39. This is an opportunity where you get to put your focus on showcasing your specialties and your portfolio and your skills and engaging with a number of potential clients and employers in a series of mock interviews, as well as a series of coding tests that you might be subject to. Simply put, this is an opportunity for you to think about what the industry what the industry currently seeks out of the various job seekers out there in Toronto and outside of Toronto, and how we might be able to go ahead and rise to the occasion and answer any of the demands that the industry may make of us. And finally, here we have DSN 3042 Studio Practice 2, where you would have another opportunity to engage in a studio setting with your instructor to build additional components that will be part of your future portfolio. So you have an opportunity to work alongside with your peers, or work as a lone wolf alone to build out the application that you always want to build, but simply didn't have the opportunity to do so. And here we have semester 3, which would map to our spring-summer semester. This is solely dedicated to what we call field placement. So sometime in February, you'll be working closely with your academic coordinator, potentially me, to seek out opportunities that may serve as a great way, a great test ground for your skills. And we'll go ahead and match you up with various employers and opportunities that George Brown is proudly serving as an arbiter for. And upon choosing your field placement, you'll be spending the rest of the summer semester working with these employers and clients and reporting back to us with your results and experience. So this is certainly a lot more industry oriented, as you can tell from the slide right here. But you'll be quite busy trying to test out your skills that you accumulated over the previous 2 semesters. So that was it for the semester by semester breakdown. Let's go and think about what you're expected to bring to the table on a weekly basis. So just accounting for all the courses that I outlined for you over the past couple of slides, when it comes to your weekly dedication or weekly commitment, you can expect to spend about 18 hours per week over the course of 14 weeks, as each course runs for about 14 to 15 weeks, 3 hours each. And we take the approach of hybrid content delivery via Blackboard and MS Teams, where we will be engaging virtually with your instructors over the course of 14 weeks. Now, as part of this course, as part of this inaugural program, or rather a young program, we're experimenting with this approach called hybrid content delivery, where the first semester is held in a virtual setting, where you will be speaking with your instructors face-to-face via MS Teams and complete the course assignments delivered via Blackboard. As part of the second semester, if the situation with the pandemic holds, when I say that, I mean without any pandemic measures in place, you will be invited to join us on campus as part of the winter semester, or semester number 2, where you will be on site and interact with instructors that way as well. And finally, one point that I want to make here is that each instructor brings his or her set of approaches in dictating how the course would unfold. So some instructors may engage you for 3 full hours on a face-to-face basis, whereas some instructors may engage you in an asynchronous fashion with a series of synchronous check-ins in place as well. So this means that your experience may differ instructor to instructor, but they are all going to synthesize to one single goal, and that is to make sure that you're ready to hit the ground running as a newly minted front-end web developer. Great. Obviously, I can talk about this program for hours on end, but that was a quick gist of what you can expect as part of the front-end development program here at George Brown College. Once again, this is a 1-year post-graduate certificate program that I would certainly would call quite intense, and that's coming from an active professional myself. Now, if that did pique your interest, however, let's go and talk about the next steps you can take to apply for this particular program. Naturally, you would go and start your journey as part of the official George Brown website, where you would go ahead and enter your information and express your intent to join our application, or join our program rather. But thereafter, you'll also be sorry, a microphone mess up. As part of the next stage in your admission process, you'll be invited to submit what we call supplementary application materials. And although it does sound scary, it really isn't. It's a simple form-based application where we ask you a number of questions related to your past experiences in building software applications or designing a visually oriented products. And this is not to dissuade you from applying for this program if you don't have any experience. This is just a way for us to calibrate our expectations of the students who are coming in for the next, as part of the next cohort. You can expect many of these questions to refer to your future career objectives, as well as the intentions of joining the program, so that we can identify whether this is a good fit between, if there is a good fit between yourself and the program, and proceed with processing with your application if we feel that there's a good fit. So what are some of the questions that you can expect in a nutshell as part of this application questionnaire? Well, we are first and foremost curious about where you come from in the realms of your educational and professional background. So this could include your past experiences in other post-secondary education institutions that you're a part of, as well as some of your work experiences that might be relevant to the specific program. Thereafter, we're also curious about some of the skills that you bring to the table, whether it be your prior experience in using applications like Photoshop or Illustrator, or whether it be your experience in dealing with some of the programming concepts that may have great parallels to some of the things that we're going to be learning as part of this program. We would love to learn more about them. And even if you feel that your skills are not directly applicable to the program that we're discussing here, you're welcome to go ahead and elaborate on those, and because we always love to learn more about you. Thereafter, we are also curious about your goals for this program as well, what you're looking to achieve immediately upon completing this particular program, and some of the more medium and long-term goals as well. And of course, once you have established your professional goals and objectives, we also want to go learn about what you wish to achieve in terms of the realms of learning objectives as well. If there's a specific technology that you're curious about, or if there's any specific area that you do have some exposure to but wish to further solidify as part of this program, we would love to learn more about them as well. And of course, personal attributes. This can be a trivia about who you are as a person, but any other miscellaneous details that we may find useful in finding the fit between yourself and the program. And of course, we all join these programs because we want to upskill ourselves and try our luck in different facets of this digital media industry. And these are some of the industries that you can expect to apply your skills to beyond this particular program. You can find yourself working in advertising agencies where you serve the various digital media production needs, or you could go and join a traditional software development firm where you serve as a glue between designers as well as engineers in building an attractive front-end applications. Thereafter, you can also go and expect your skills to be applied to a broader aspects of digital media production, where you would be part of larger corporations, heading or serving as part of the digital media production department. And of course, because this particular program runs a gamut with no particular niche on a specific part of the front-end application development, you can also go ahead and throw your hat in the ring, so to speak, in the realms of startups, because Toronto certainly has a pretty bustling startup scene that you might find yourself in. Thereafter, or rather, as part of the program, you can also expect a number of support systems that you can take advantage of. You can expect to stay in touch with your academic coordinator throughout the entire program, but also deal closely with George Brown College's Field Education and Partnership Department. Their sole purpose is to make sure that you do have some touch points with employers and other industry professionals before graduating from this program. So you can expect a whole lot of a liaison to take place between yourself and this particular department. There's going to be a big intersection between visual design and technology as well. In fact, judging from our previous cohort and the applications that we received so far, we have a number of individuals who are joining us with some visual design background, as well as those with some technology-oriented background as well, IT professionals or computer science students who want to learn more about building attractive front-end development application projects. So you can certainly expect to see a whole lot of uh, intersection and mashups between and collaborations between these two otherwise distinct fields. And of course, mentorship from individual instructors. We spend a lot of time and effort in recruiting our instructors because, to be frank with you, they're busy at their own work, entrenched in their own niche and in their respective industries. So we take a lot of effort in getting them to join us as part of this program to share what they know about the industry and tell you what they wish they knew before joining their respective fields. So you can certainly expect to have a close mentorship from your individual instructors. And I do want you to go ahead and take full advantage of whatever that they can offer while you're actively engaging with them. Great. So once again, this was only a brief introduction to what this program offers in broad strokes. And I hope you found this presentation helpful. Of course, I'm sure you have many burning questions that are perhaps left unanswered as part of this presentation. So if you do have more questions about this program, you're more than welcome to contact me, Chris Kim, your program coordinator, and by using the following email address. It's chris.kim@georgebrown.ca.